Then the $15,000 I've been transferring to your account every month stops today. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. My daughter Patricia's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Her husband Derek looked like he'd swallowed a lemon whole. Let me tell you how a 74-year-old widow learned that kindness without boundaries is just another word for fool. My name is Alina Whitmore, though most folks call me Ellie. I've got silver hair that I keep in a sensible bob, arthritis in both knees, and apparently, according to my daughter's husband, an outdated sense of what family obligations look like in the modern world. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to stay with me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It warms this old heart to know where my words travel. That particular gem came during Thanksgiving dinner, right after I'd asked if they could help me with a small plumbing repair at my cottage. The leak under my kitchen sink had been getting worse for weeks, and at my age, crawling around under cabinets isn't exactly advisable. Ellie, Derek had said, setting down his fork with theatrical precision, we're happy to help family, but there needs to be some reciprocity here. We can't keep being the only ones giving in this relationship. I'd sat there, mashed potatoes cooling on my plate, trying to process what I'd just heard. The only ones giving. Patricia had the grace to look uncomfortable, but she didn't contradict him. That silence told me everything I needed to know. So there we were, 3 weeks later at their holiday party in their beautiful Tudor-style home in the suburbs of Boston. Crystal chandeliers, catered appetizers, and about 30 of their closest friends sipping expensive champagne while smooth jazz played in the background. I'd been standing near the kitchen, watching Patricia show off her new designer handbag to a cluster of admirers, when Derek cornered me. "Alina," he'd said, using my full name like I was a child being scolded, "we need to discuss your living situation." My living situation. "Patricia and I have been talking. The cottage is too much for you to maintain. All those repairs, the upkeep. We think it's time you considered assisted living. There's a wonderful facility near here, Canterbury Meadows. We've already scheduled a tour for you next week." Something cold settled in my stomach. I'm perfectly capable of living independently, Derek. "Are you, though?" He gestured vaguely. "The plumbing issues, that fall you had last year, the trouble with the furnace, it's becoming a pattern." The fall he mentioned, I'd slipped on black ice in January. The furnace trouble, a simple pilot light that went out. But Derek had a way of reframing every ordinary life event into evidence of my supposed decline. That's when his sister Monica joined us, her smile sharp as a blade. "Derek's right, Alina. At your age, it's irresponsible to live alone. What if something happens?" "I have a medical alert system," I'd said quietly, "and neighbors who check on me daily." "Still," Derek continued, "Patricia and I would sleep better knowing you were somewhere with professional oversight. And honestly, the cottage would sell for a nice price in this market. That money could fund your care for years." My cottage, the home I'd shared with my late husband Robert for 43 years, the garden where I'd taught Patricia to plant tomatoes, the porch where Robert and I had watched sunsets and planned our future together. "The cottage isn't for sale," I'd said. Derek's expression had hardened. "Alina, let's be realistic. You're living on Social Security and Robert's modest pension. The property taxes alone must be eating through your savings. How are you even managing?" That's when I'd said it, those words that changed everything. "Then the $15,000 I've been transferring to your account every month stops today." The color drained from Derek's face faster than water down a drain. Patricia appeared at his elbow, as if summoned by some marital telepathy. "Mother, what are you talking about?" I smiled, a real smile, not the tight, polite ones I'd been giving them for the past 3 years. "The $15,000 monthly transfer from my trust fund to your joint account. The money that's been paying for, well, everything by the looks of it." Derek found his voice. "Trust fund, you told us you were barely scraping by." "No," I corrected gently. "You assumed I was barely scraping by. I never said any such thing." Patricia's face had gone from pale to splotchy red. But you're always asking us for help with repairs, with transportation. I asked for help, Patricia, not money. I wanted my daughter and son-in-law to care enough to spend time with me, to be present in my life. Apparently, I should have realized that your presence could only be purchased, not freely given. The party chatter around us had started to die down. People were noticing our little drama unfolding by the kitchen. Derek's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. Alina, you can't just stop the payments. We have obligations, expenses. A $900,000 mortgage on this house, 2 BMW leases, private school tuition for the twins, and a timeshare in Barbados, I said calmly. Yes, I know all about your expenses. Because unlike you, Derek, I actually read the quarterly statements from the trust. Patricia's hands were shaking. How long have you been supporting us? 3 years, since Robert passed and left me as sole trustee of the family trust. Your father set it up when you were born, Patricia. He wanted to make sure you'd always be taken care of. But he also included provisions for how the money should be distributed. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app I'd been monitoring carefully for months. Robert specified that funds could be distributed to you for education, health emergencies, or legitimate hardships. He did not intend for his hard-earned money to finance a lifestyle his daughter couldn't afford on her own merit. Derek grabbed for my phone, but I pulled it back. The trust documents are with my attorney, Derek, along with detailed records of every transfer, every expense, every lie you've told about your financial situation. You've been spying on us, Patricia's voice cracked. I've been watching my daughter spiral into a life built entirely on borrowed money and borrowed happiness. Did you know Derek took out a second mortgage on this house 6 months ago? Or that he's $125,000 in debt from day trading? The room had gone completely silent now. 30 pairs of eyes watching our family implode in real time. Derek's mask of civility finally cracked. This is elder abuse, he hissed. Withholding financial support from family is perfectly legal when the family in question has been committing fraud. A new voice interrupted. I turned to see James Chen, my attorney. Stepping through the crowd, I'd asked him to attend the party, just in case things went exactly as I'd anticipated. Mr. Whitmore, James said, addressing Derek with professional courtesy. I'm Alina's attorney. You might want to stop talking now. Derek's face went from red to purple. Who the hell are you? I'm the person who's been documenting your financial fraud for the past 6 months. James opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Did you know that forging someone's signature on bank documents is a federal crime? Because you've been signing Alina's name to trust distribution requests for unauthorized expenses. Patricia sank into a nearby chair. Derek, what did you do? What I had to do, he snapped. Your mother's trust manager required her signature for distributions over $10,000. I just streamlined the process. You forged my mother's signature. To take care of our family, to give you the life you deserve. I watched my daughter's face cycle through shock, horror, and finally something that looked like understanding. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the forgeries. I know, sweetheart, I said softly. But you knew about the money. You knew we were living beyond your means, and you never questioned where it was all coming from. James cleared his throat. Mrs. Whitmore, would you like me to proceed with the criminal complaint, or would you prefer to handle this as a civil matter? I looked at my daughter, at the girl I'd raised, who'd somehow become a woman I barely recognized. That depends on Patricia. On me, her voice was small. Yes, on whether you're willing to face the truth about your life and make some real changes, or whether you're going to continue enabling your husband's criminal behavior. Derek started to protest, but Patricia held up her hand, silencing him. What kind of changes? The honest kind, marriage counseling, individual therapy for both of you, full financial transparency. Derek enters a program for gambling addiction. You both get real jobs that you can actually live on. And if we do all that, Patricia asked, then I won't press charges. The trust will continue to provide support for the twins' education and legitimate emergencies. But the blank check days are over. Derek exploded. You can't dictate how we live our lives. You're right, I agreed. I can't, but I can choose whether or not to enable your dysfunction with my late husband's money. Robert worked 3 jobs to build his business. He saved every penny. He didn't do that so his son-in-law could pretend to be a hedge fund manager while gambling away the family's future. I turned to the stunned crowd of party guests. I apologize for disrupting your evening, but I'm 74 years old, and I've learned that some truths are too important to whisper. As I walked toward the door, Patricia called out, "Mom, wait." I turned back. "I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry for everything, for Derek's behavior, for taking advantage, for not seeing what was happening." "I know you are, sweetheart, but sorry isn't enough anymore. Sorry has to become different." The drive home to my cottage was peaceful. I listened to the classical radio station Robert used to love and thought about the conversation I'd had with James Chen 3 months earlier. "Mrs. Whitmore," he'd said, spreading documents across his desk, "your son-in-law has been systematically defrauding your trust, but more concerning is this." He'd shown me a life insurance application. A $750,000 policy on my life, with Derek listed as beneficiary. "How is that even possible?" I'd asked. "It appears he forged your signature on the application, listed himself as your power of attorney." The room had spun slightly. "James, are you suggesting Derek might?" "I'm suggesting you need to protect yourself, Alina. People who commit financial fraud sometimes escalate when they feel trapped." That's what led to the private investigator, the forensic accountant, and 6 months of carefully documented evidence. Evidence that now sat in a safe deposit box, along with a revised will that left everything to Patricia's children in a trust Derek couldn't touch. When I got home, there was a note taped to my door. "Mrs. Whitmore, I fixed your sink. Pipe was corroded. Replaced the whole thing, no charge. You've been so kind to my mother at church. Tommy Martinez." I smiled, thinking about Tommy's mother, Maria, who I'd been driving to her chemotherapy appointments for the past year. Real kindness, the kind that expected nothing in return. My phone buzzed, a text from Patricia. "Can we talk, tomorrow, just us?" I texted back, "Come for breakfast, 9 a.m., come alone." That night, I sat in Robert's old recliner, looking at the photos on our wall. Patricia at her graduation, Patricia on her wedding day, Patricia holding the twins for the first time. "I hope I'm doing the right thing, Robert," I whispered to his photo. "I hope you'd understand." The next morning, Patricia arrived exactly at 9, looking like she'd been up all night. No designer handbag, no expensive jewelry, just my daughter in jeans and a sweater, her eyes red from crying. "Coffee," I offered. She nodded, following me into the kitchen. We sat at the same table where I'd taught her to do homework, where we'd planned her wedding, where she'd told me she was pregnant with the twins. "Derek moved out last night," she said quietly. "His brother's letting him stay at his place." I poured us both coffee. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified, ashamed, angry, all of it." She wrapped her hands around the mug. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Always." "Were you ever really in trouble? The plumbing, the furnace, the fall on the ice. Were those real, or were you testing us?" I met her eyes. They were real, Patricia, every single one. And each time I reached out, hoping my daughter would show up. Instead, I got excuses, suggestions that I hire someone or silence. She flinched. I was so caught up in maintaining appearances, in being the perfect wife with the perfect life, that I forgot how to just be your daughter. "When did it start?" I asked gently. "When did Derek's ambitions become more important than the truth?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "I think it started before we even got married. Derek came from nothing. His father was an alcoholic. His mother worked 3 jobs. He was so determined to be different, to be successful, to never struggle like they did. And somewhere along the way, appearing successful became more important than actually being successful." She nodded. I knew we were living beyond our means. I knew the lifestyle didn't match Derek's salary. But I told myself the big break was coming, that his investments would pay off, that it was just temporary. The gambling. I didn't know how bad it was. I knew he did some trading, played some poker with friends. I didn't know about the online accounts, the losses, the borrowed money. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Mom, we're going to lose the house. Probably, I agreed. The twins will have to change schools. They'll adjust. Derek might go to jail. That depends on whether he accepts responsibility and gets help, or whether he tries to blame everyone else for his choices. Patricia broke down then, sobbing into her hands. I moved my chair closer and held her, like I'd done when she was small and the world felt too big and scary. I ruined everything, she cried. No, sweetheart, you made mistakes, big ones, but you're here now facing the truth. That's where healing starts. Over the next few months, I watched my daughter slowly rebuild her life. She got a job teaching at a local elementary school. The twins transferred to public school and, surprisingly, seemed happier. Derek entered a treatment program for gambling addiction and started working with a therapist. Patricia filed for legal separation, but not divorce. I need to see if the person I married is still in there somewhere, she told me. But I also need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own feet. The house went into foreclosure. Patricia and the twins moved into a modest apartment in town. For the first time in years, my daughter came over for weekly dinners, not because she needed something, but because she wanted to be there. One evening, about 6 months after the fateful Thanksgiving party, Patricia and I were doing dishes together in my kitchen. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you just cut us off? Why offer Derek the chance to make things right? I dried a plate carefully before answering. Because I've learned that sometimes the cruelest thing you can do for someone is enable them to keep lying to themselves. And sometimes the kindest thing is to force them to face the truth, even when it's painful. Do you think Derek and I will make it? I don't know, sweetheart, but I know you'll be okay either way. You're stronger than you think. She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her in years. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember that. Better late than never. That night, after Patricia left, I sat on my porch watching the sunset, thinking about the strange journey that had brought us here. I'd thought I was teaching my daughter about accountability and consequences, but really, I was learning something too. I was learning that love isn't measured in dollars transferred or sacrifices made. Real love sometimes means standing back and letting people face the consequences of their choices. It means being honest even when honesty hurts. It means refusing to participate in the comfortable lies that keep people stuck. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Mrs. Whitmore, I wanted you to know I celebrated 90 days sober from gambling today. My sponsor says I should make amends. I know I can't fix what I did, but I'm trying to become someone who would never do it again. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. One day at a time, Derek. That's all any of us can do. Another text came through, this one from Patricia. The twins asked if they could spend next weekend with you. Something about Grandma teaching them to plant a garden. I smiled, my heart full. Tell them to bring their rain boots. We're planting tomatoes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I thought about Robert and how he'd always said the best investment wasn't in stocks or bonds or real estate. It was in people. But even people, he'd warned me, needed to be invested in wisely. Sometimes that meant supporting them. Sometimes it meant stepping back. And sometimes it meant loving them enough to let them fall so they could learn to stand on their own. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. But sitting there on my porch, in the cottage I'd fought to keep, with a weekend with my grandchildren to look forward to and a daughter who was finally becoming the woman she was meant to be, I realized that some lessons, however painful, are worth every penny of their cost. The money in Robert's trust would eventually go to the twins, as he'd always intended. But the real inheritance I hoped to leave them was something else entirely. The understanding that true wealth isn't measured in bank balances or impressive houses or designer handbags. It's measured in honest relationships, in the courage to face hard truths, and in the strength to rebuild when everything falls apart. At 74, I'd finally learned what my late husband had tried to tell me all along. The most generous thing you can give someone isn't money. It's the truth. Even when the truth costs everything. Especially when the truth costs everything. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.